When you first step into the Land of Shadow, it doesn't take long to realise that Ansbach stands out amongst the NPCs there. Among the Chaos, he is one of the most rational and insightful NPCs you'll meet in the DLC.
I am Ansbach, formerly in service to Lord Mohg.
From the very start, Ansbach reveals his past allegiance to Mohg, the notorious Lord of Blood, and since the only way you ended up here was by defeating Mohg, probably best to keep that detail to yourself for now. Despite his former loyalties, Ansbach clarifies that his path has shifted. But what caused this change of heart?
I'm hardly the steady hand I once was. My fighting days are far behind me, which is why I have chosen to dedicate myself to investigation, to discern tender Miquella's ultimate purpose.
Excuse me while I interject here and gush about how much I love Ansbach's character design. Look at how drippy this man is. So bloodborne, so vile blood. And don't you worry, this isn't the only Bloodborne reference I'm going to make in this video. Anyway, I just wanted to show you this concept art. Speaking of art, if you find your plain walls boring, let me welcome back the sponsor of this video, Displate. These are not your average paper prints. Displates are sleek, highly detailed metal posters in a range of designs. And by range, I mean there are 2 million designs available. Whether you like Elden Ring, Warhammer, The Witcher, Marvel, or many other iconic franchises, Displate has officially licensed designs for you to find something you're passionate about. If you're an artist, Displate is also a platform for you to upload, promote, and print your work onto a metal canvas. The reason I love Displate is just how easy it is to mount them. No tools, no hassle, you just put down the sticker leaf, slap the magnet on top, and there you go. Your poster is up in seconds. And if you want to switch things up, you can swap them around easily. Displate just dropped their Textra line of tactile textures, 3D contours, and a choice of matte or gloss finish. They've just made a selection available in larger sizes too. If you order now, your new metal posters, all printed in the European Union, should arrive in 4 to 5 business days. Use the discount link in the description to automatically apply at checkout, or just use my code CHALICE to get 22% off 1 to 2 Displates, or even 27% off when you grab 3 or more. Thank you so much, Displate. Now let's get back to the lore. Having left his days as a warrior behind, Ansbach now seeks to uncover Miquella's true purpose in the Land of Shadow. He admits he doesn't fully understand why Miquella is here, and asks for your help, urging you to track Miquella's crosses found scattered throughout the land. And this is quite curious. Could it be that none of Miquella's followers fully grasp what their master is planning? Is this blind faith, or are they all under some unseen charm? This unease only deepens as you continue your journey, leaving the safety of the starting area and crossing at 2 distinct borders. That's when something quite eerie happens. Shattering sounds echo through the air, and sparkling fragments fall from the sky like glass. Then a text box appears. Somewhere, a great rune has broken. And so too has a powerful charm. A wave of dread starts to settle within you, and you race back to Ansbach for answers, but the atmosphere has changed dramatically when you return.
Kindly Miquella has discarded his great rune. The fog that vexed my aging faculties has been lifted, and follies better left forgotten haunt me once again.
At this point we discover something intriguing about Miquella. He has deliberately cast aside his great rune. If this sounds familiar, then it should. Another demigod famously did the same, Ranni, and that decision of hers sparked nothing less than chaos, setting the stage for the catastrophic event known as the Shattering. So learning now that Miquella chose to abandon his rune raises some very unsettling questions. But let's take a quick step back to review what runes are. Runes are fragments of the Elden Ring, scattered across the lands between when Marika shattered the Elden Ring. The Shattering event led to the chaos. The demigods scrambled to claim these powerful shards. They became known as the Shard Bearers, who possess these fragments, and they are imbued with tremendous strength. In my opinion, I believe that the Great Runes don't entirely grant new powers, but amplify what's already there, and that brings us back to Miquella. By discarding his Great Rune, it seems his influence over others, his charm if you will, began to fade, releasing those under his spell. This is evident in the reactions of certain characters like Ansbach, who, after you learn that a powerful charm is broken, describes it as a fog has been lifted, beginning to see things more clearly for the first time in a while. But don't be mistaken, this doesn't mean that Miquella doesn't have any more charm or influence. Far from it. Let's fast forward a bit to the end of the DLC, Spoiler alert for anyone who wants to skip. In the final boss fight, during the second phase, Miquella proves that he still has some otherworldly power. He can effectively incapacitate you with his charm, putting you under a spell, and if you falter a second time, he will steal your heart. Interestingly, you can find Miquella's discarded rune during your journey in the DLC, and it certainly looks like it was thrown to the ground and stomped on. You can actually use this item to counter the fatal charm effect in the boss fight. Its description reads, "Broken and bereft of its bounty, it retains naught but the power to resist charms." It suggests that this rune may have once held far more power than what you can wield now. But enough about you, Miquella. This video isn't about you. The critical takeaway here is that with the breaking of this intense charm, the NPCs are finally free now to reflect on their true intentions, allegiances and memories. Their minds, once fogged, are now clear. Ansbach in particular delivers an absolute bombshell of a confession.
Once, in an attempt to free Lord Mohg from his enchantment, I challenged tender Miquella, only to have my own heart rather artfully stolen. I knew not how weak I was. I believed that with sufficient mastery, even an Empyrean would be within reach of my blade. I could not have been more mistaken.
Ansbach reveals that he once fought Miquella and lost. As we know from our first encounter, Ansbach has been in service to Lord Mohg. But now with this revelation, it becomes clear that at some point, Miquella charmed him, and desperate to free his lord from the spell, Ansbach did something incredibly bold. He challenged Miquella, hoping that by defeating the demigod, Mohg's enchantment would break. He believed that his skill and training were enough to face an Empyrean, but as soon as he learned he was no match for Miquella, just as Mohg had been charmed, Ansbach too fell under Miquella's spell. Until now, when he woke up from his haze, Ansbach is still left with questions. What happened to Mohg, and why? As you search for answers about Miquella, you come across yet another eerie and insanely designed legacy dungeon, the Specimen Storehouse. It's a vast library filled with carcasses, research notes, and the gigantic bodies of horned beings. Among these strange surroundings, you find Ansbach standing in a quiet corner, book in hand, deep in thought.
After Lord Mohg's slaying at his dynastic palace, it appears his body has been absconded with and taken straight to kind Miquella.
Ansbach reveals something quite concerning. After Mohg was defeated, his body mysteriously vanished. Even more strange, it was taken to Miquella. We'll soon learn why, but for now, Ansbach is desperate to understand the reason.
Surely you recall that I once served Lord Mohg as a Pureblood Knight, after failing him in every regard, and losing sight of my vows. I'd do anything to make amends, in whatever meager way I can.
He explains more about his past here. He once held the rank of a Pureblood Knight. But what exactly does that mean? Honestly, there isn't too much info on the Pureblood Knights, so we'll have to read between the lines a little bit. If you completed Vare's quest in the base game, you might remember that he gives you a Pureblood Knight medal as a reward. It is proof that one is a glorious knight of the new dynasty of Mohgwyn that the Lord of Blood will inaugurate. It has quite an elaborate design about it, similar to a badge of honour or a ceremonial medal. But what's strange is that not really any other characters or enemies in the game seem to hold the title of Pureblood Knight, nor have this insignia. So where are all the Pureblood Knights? Well, according to Ansbach, he used to be one, but that was a long time ago. Leda, one of Miquella's most loyal followers, gives us a glimpse of Ansbach in his prime.
He insists that he's nothing but a worn-down, over-the-hill soldier. But in his day, he was the feared commander of the Pureblood Knights, who cleaved open Miquella the Kine with his blood blade.
This paints a very different picture of the wise older man that we know today. He wasn't just part of the Pureblood Knights, he led them, and apparently he was formidable enough to seriously wound Miquella in battle, even though he ultimately lost due to being charmed. But we should take Leda's words with a grain of salt. She idolizes Miquella. She's his #1 glazer, so her account might be a little exaggerated. She likely didn't see the event firsthand, and her bias could be colouring the story. Still, it confirms that Ansbach held a high rank and skill, and explains why he feels so guilty. He thinks that he failed Mohg, somehow breaking the vows he swore as a Pureblood Knight. What these vows are, we don't know, but we can assume they were probably something like to protect one's lord with their life, and seeing as Mohg is currently not alive, and even worse, his body is about to be desecrated, you can understand the guilt and confusion that is left with Ansbach. And the answer to Ansbach's questions might be more disturbing than he even imagined. In the specimen storehouse, you come across a scroll detailing a secret rite for divinity. A lord will usher in a god's return, and the lord's soul will require a vessel. To break this down, this ritual appears to have 3 key players: a god candidate, a soul, and a body. It's kind of a holy trinity, but in the Elden Ring universe, it's well established that the body and the soul are separate entities that can exist independently. We've seen this with Rani, who discarded her flesh, but not her soul, and with Godwyn, whose soul perished while his body remained. So in simple terms, Miquella needs a lord to become a god. To do this, he's piecing together the best soul and the best vessel to make that happen. He's playing Build-A-Bear with his siblings' remains, and after Ansbach deduces this, he's not too happy about who Miquella has chosen for the body element.
He has forsaken Lord Mohg's soul. He desires only his empty shell. It beggars belief, but I'm afraid tender Miquella fails to grasp the humiliation implied by this act. One thing is certain. My dear lord deserved better.
Ansbach tries to give Miquella the benefit of the doubt, saying he probably doesn't realise how humiliating this decision is for Mohg, but it's still clear that Ansbach is insulted and fuming. His lord's body is going to be desecrated and turned into a vessel for another soul, while Mohg's soul is going to be discarded into the ether. After everything Mohg did for Miquella, this is how he's repaid. So why was Mohg chosen to be the vessel? To answer that, we need to address the major spoiler of the final fight and the elephant in the room, so to speak, the soul that was chosen to be Miquella's lord. In their childhood, Miquella saw in Radahn a lord, his strength and his kindness that stood in stark contrast with their afflicted selves. And so Miquella made his heartfelt wish that Radahn would one day be his king consort. So there it is, from a very early age, Miquella wanted Radahn to be his lord. Radahn's soul as an honourable warrior made him the perfect choice for Miquella's plan. No one else was more fitting to be the soul placed into Mohg's body. When you reach the final boss battle, you don't actually see Mohg, you see Radahn. Somehow, even though Mohg is the physical vessel, Radahn has taken over the appearance, soul and body. Whether this is just for player experience to let us see the iconic Prime Radahn again, or if it's as Ansbach suggested, that Mohg was just an empty shell for Radahn to inhabit fully, we don't know for sure. But that brings me back to my original question, why use Mohg's body? The simple answer could just be opportunism. Mohg was both extremely loyal and, more importantly, a fresh kill. You defeat Mohg before entering the Land of Shadow, meaning his body is technically still fresh. It's a grim detail, but maybe that's all Miquella needed. We don't really understand how this divine ritual works, but it's possible that Mohg's freshly slain body was perfect for Miquella's purposes. Or is there something more unique to Mohg himself that made him the ideal vessel? Could the reason be blood? Mohg didn't earn the title Lord of Blood for nothing, and it all traces back to his time in the sewers. After being banished there for being born an omen, Mohg made contact with a mysterious being, the Formless Mother. When Mohg stood before her deep underground, his accursed blood erupted with fire, and he was besotted with the defilement that he was born into. This encounter changed everything. The blood he had been shamed for, the blood that branded him as an omen, became his greatest source of pride. His blood was his power. In the base game, we don't know much about the Formless Mother, but we do know that she is also referred to as the Mother of Truth. However, the prominent themes surrounding her are bodies and blood, figurative or literal, from which her followers gain their strength. One of Mohg's signature moves is called Bloodboon, and it's described like this. Thrust your arm into the body of the Formless Mother and then scatter the blood flame to set the area ablaze. The Mother of Truth craves wounds. With this move, you're symbolically causing pain to the Formless Mother, something she wants. She wants bloodletting, and though we don't see any physical form of her, perhaps that's the point. She's formless, she's more abstract, existing all around us, but only those chosen by her can actually pierce her flesh and draw the power. Mohg's sacred spear ties into this idea too. It tells you, raise the sacred spear and pierce the body of the Formless Mother. Stab up to 3 times, creating explosions of blood with each thrust. As we discussed earlier with Miquella's hand-designed Holy Trinity, the religious undertones of the Formless Mother are clear. Actually, there are no undertones, just tones. The 3-pronged spear, communion with God, the body and the blood, are incredibly reminiscent of the Last Supper. This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." Radahn, body, Mohg, blood, remembrance, covenant, dynasty. You can say I'm reaching with this one, and I'll completely understand. I don't consider myself particularly religious. Yes, I understand the irony, but I appreciate the ways that religion's themes shape and influence media, especially video games. Anyway, back to the Formless Mother. The DLC revealed a lot more about her, specifically a new group of beings called Bloodfiends. These naked mole rat beings are terrifying remnants of a civilization forever changed by encountering a strange otherworldly being. Sound familiar? Long ago, a subjugated tribe discovered a twisted deity amongst the ravages of war, and they were transformed into Bloodfiends. The Mother of Truth was their saviour. We know the Mother of Truth is another name for the Formless Mother, and she directly is responsible for the Bloodfiends' current state. Presumably, their appearance and nature were transformed, leaving them with one violent, singular purpose: the worship of blood. When you encounter them in the game, you'll see them performing blood rituals, brutal in their demeanour and reflected in their weapons. Take the Bloodfiend's sacred spear, for example. It acts as a weapon and a conduit for their god, much like Mohg's spear, which he also holds up to the sky to invoke the Formless Mother. They also wield the Bloodfiend's fork. 3 tines of carved bone spear the victim to provoke blood loss, a ritual implement for blood offerings to the Formless Mother. At times, the Bloodfiends will spill even their own blood using these forks. Like a trident, like Mohg's, the magic number 3 appears here again. The fact that these fiends bleed to themselves using their very weapons shows how vital bloodletting is to their worship. And even their food reflects their devotion. One of their delicacies is raw meat soaked in blood, but not just any blood. The blood is said to have fallen from the Formless Mother's wound. Never will it dry. Never will it rot. This is especially interesting because it blurs the line between myth and reality. The dish claims to contain the Formless Mother's very blood, implying it possesses magical qualities that it won't dry or decay. Remember this specific quality for later. Speaking of their visceral approach to combat, what about using an actual arm as a weapon? And I don't mean arm like bicep, like I'm going to give you these hands. Think more like a Disneyland turkey leg. Some Bloodfiends wield the detached arms of their own kind. An arm pulled from the corpse of one of their kin and wielded as a makeshift weapon. Having been sanctified by a blood ritual, this armament is capable of spraying blood stored within when executing a strong attack. Blood storage, bloodletting, and wound making are obsessions for this clan. It seems barbaric, but remember, the Bloodfiends view the Formless Mother as their saviour, suggesting that their lives were far worse beforehand. They were described as being subjugated people, defeated in a war and likely oppressed. Gaining freedom even through this bloodshed was a sacrifice they were willing to make, much like Mohg. Anyway, back to why I brought this up in the first place. Mohg's selection as the body for Radahn to become a lord, and ergo allowing Miquella to ascend to a god. Maybe it's due to the power in Mohg's blood. After all, in the boss fight, we see Radahn using some of Mohg's iconic blood moves. As an omen, Mohg is a powerful specimen to choose as a vessel. And after all, did we actually capture a glimpse of the Formless Mother in the shadow of the Erdtree cinematic trailer? We do see Marika ascending to godhood and reaching into some kind of fleshy orifice. Could this be the body of the Formless Mother? The wound that she so craves that she will never let heal? Perhaps Mohg's connection to the outer god is another reason Miquella chose him, or maybe not. I don't know, guys. I don't even know what this thing is. Now, back to Ansbach. Consider why his former regiment is called the Pureblood Knights. Remember how the Formless Mother's blood is described as never drying, never rotting. Interesting, because when you consider the base game, you do find current members of Mohg's regime, but they don't exactly embody the qualities of pure blood. Let me give you some examples of words that are used to describe sanguine nobles and bloody fingers. Accursed blood, cess blood, cursed, sickening, wicked. None of these words evoke the idea of purity, the kind that the Formless Mother represents. This is dirty, festering blood, completely tainted. It seems like something has corrupted the ideals Mohg initially wanted to uphold. Before, it sounded like there was an honourable system with knights, and now it's just wannabe nobles vying for power in this new promised dynasty. Ansbach, however, is from a different era, an older generation where honour and standards meant something. His attire reflects this. The embroidered crest of the Pureblood Knights has now all but faded. Ansbach understood that keeping his oath to his old master was not an act of logic, nor would it bear any justice, but it was for these reasons he was unable to let go. Poor Ansbach is bound by a sense of honour and the limitations of age, but he still yearns to avenge his lord, a true knight until the end.
I am a warrior, but I've aged. I cannot afford to act hastily. Curse it all. I know my limits. I could spend the rest of my life honing my craft, and still that creature would be out of my blade's reach.
Ansbach longs to fight and spill blood in his lord's name again, and if you've completed his quest, he will do just that. He will stand by your side in the battle of allies, betraying Miquella to fight with you. And fight he does, wielding this impressive scythe, the obsidian lamina. The obsidian edge relies not upon trickery to fulfill its violent purpose. Only well-honed skill is required to rip and rend through foes, sowing blossoms of red upon the battlefield. I found the word trickery here quite interesting. It might be a nod to Bloodborne, specifically the trick weapons used in that game, like the burial blade wielded by Gehrman. It could be a subtle reference, because Ansbach doesn't need any tricks to be that deadly in combat. He just has pure, raw skill. When you reach the end of your journey, you're finally given the option to confess to Ansbach that you were the one responsible for Mohg's death.
Well, you needn't worry. It was you, wasn't it? Who defeated Lord Mohg. Fear not. I bear no grudge against you. His Eminence was felled in an honourable duel, and such are the risks of seeking lordship.
And Ansbach takes it surprisingly well. He might have even known all along. Still, he emphasises honour here, commending both you and Mohg for fighting fairly. No tricks, no underhanded means, just a warrior's duel. Unless, of course, you were one of those ones who cheese the fight by sniping him from outside the boss room. In that case, Ansbach is definitely not talking to you. When the time comes, Ansbach fights alongside you against the final boss, and it feels right for him to bring peace to his lord. And even then, despite everything, he's still incredibly respectful when he faces Radahn in the arena.
General Radahn, a pleasure to see you after all this time. But those remains do not belong to you. Lord Mohg will have his dignity.
It's a bittersweet moment. Ansbach has to lay his own lord to rest using the same blood flame that Mohg knighted him with. A tragic final act. And if Ansbach falls in the battle, his last words leave a powerful impact, lighting a fire in your heart to make the world a better place.
But you're astonished. Become our new lord. A lord not for gods, but for men.
Thank you everybody so much for watching this video. I had a great time exploring Ansbach. I really enjoy him as a character. And I also wanted to shout out the artist of today's thumbnail. They did an absolutely amazing job capturing how cool Ansbach is. Please go follow them on Twitter at Shimhack. The art is just incredible. Please go drop them a follow and a like. And I want to say a big thank you to you as well for watching this video. If you have any topics that you'd like me to discuss about the DLC, please leave them below. And a super special thank you to my channel members and patrons. See you in the next one, guys. Bye bye.